Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. But first, I'm going to go ahead and give the medical disclaimer. The information provided is for educational purposes and is not intended as medical advice or a substitute for medical advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare professional. We do not aim to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any illness or disease. And you should always consult with a doctor or other healthcare professional for medical advice or information about diagnosis and treatment. The information in this presentation has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration or any other medical body. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Dr. Dori Narbo, and I'm your host on today's call. For those of you who don't know me, I am a clinical researcher and an author of several books. So welcome to our Tuesday call with Clayton Thomas, who is the founder of Root. Clayton has over 25 years of experience in the health and wellness industry. And for the past 16 years, he's been focused on detoxification and supplementation formulations with a simple philosophy, cure the cause. Last week, we talked about neurotoxicity, but today we're going to talk about one of your favorite subjects. Can you guess what it is?
Chicken fried steak.
Mr. Quaff himself. We're going to talk about hair loss.
Oh,
and why am I losing my hair?
This is an interesting topic of conversation because it goes two ways.
Oh. So we're going to talk about the history of hair loss, what it is, understanding the growth cycle, types of hair loss, causes of hair loss, and the heavy metal connection. So hair loss and what to do about it has an interesting timeline that dates back as far as 1553 BC. These are pretty funny. So I think you guys will get a kick out of it. So in 1553 BC, the Ebers papyrus was the oldest Egyptian medical text ever found, and it included information about hair loss treatment. And the most popular medicine was a mixture of iron oxide, red lead, burnt quills of hedgehog with oil, beer, burnt flax mixed with oil with wasp's dung, onions, alabaster honey, and fat from a variety of animals, including snakes, crocodiles, hippopotamuses, and lions.
You know what? We haven't actually gone too far away from that for some companies.
Well, I mean, you just see how important it was even back then, right?
Well, and I think the interesting part, when you look at ancient Egypt, I believe a lot of the pharaohs were bald, if I'm not incorrect, but but it's interesting is they've always used different things on their head for their hair, their scalp, that also could run down and wash over them throughout the day. Black cumin seed oil being one of those, and frankincense being another.
Well, this is interesting too. So in ancient Greece, many physicians searched for hair loss remedies, such as Hippocrates, who tried to find a cure for his own hair loss. It was Hippocrates, in fact, who was the first physician to ever describe and theorize about surgical solutions for hair loss. And after lengthy experimentation, he thought he had found a great solution, which was a mixture of opium, horseradish, pigeon droppings, beetroot, a variety of spices. Unfortunately for Hippocrates, it didn't work. So he became so bald that extreme hair loss to this day is sometimes known as Hippocratic baldness. And so in the same period, Hippocrates recorded the first surgical solution to baldness, and he noted that the Persian army eunuchs never experienced hair loss. And he therefore drew a parallel between testosterone levels and sexual drive and hair loss. So as hot-blooded men went bald, he suggested that castration would be the ultimate solution to hair loss if the price was worth paying.
I think that's a punishment for having good hair. I'm pretty sure that's not the ideal treatment.
Don't
We
want to try
could
that.
actually, you know what? If we could do a survey on here, we could ask the community if okay, who's up for castration to make sure you don't go bald, and I'm pretty sure everyone would go, nope, sorry, not gonna do it.
Exactly. So in 44 BC in ancient Rome, hair was a symbol of power and virility. However, Rome's leader at the time, Julius Caesar, suffered from male pattern baldness. And so he employed various physicians to help him find a cure, despite applying various lotions and potions, such as a combination of ground mice, horse teeth, bear grease, and deer. He continued to suffer because those didn't work either. So he came up with the cosmetic comb over. This is probably where that was invented, the comb over, right? And also wearing a wreath. This is the reason he wore the wreath. And it seemed to be the only solution as his empire continued to expand. His wreath soon became a symbol of power without the need for hair. So the more hair loss that he had, the bigger his wreath got. I mean, it was like having his whole head.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, which is really interesting because, the wreath, well, here's another thing. In 1624, Louis the 13th, I mean, wigs were very popular, right, in France. He began wearing a full wig to cover his thinning hair and to protect himself from lice. And soon after his first wigged appearance at court, other members of the court and the upper class, they saw this as an example, right? So that wigs soon became, symbolize power and wealth. And rumor has it that King Louis had 40 wig makers, and no one ever saw him without his wig, except for his barber. And wigs became they became so expensive to make and maintain that wig thieves started to emerge who would try to rob passengers in carriages, jumping through the roof and grabbing the passenger's wig before disappearing. Can you imagine? And so then this brings us up a little bit more in modern times. In 1939 was the first account of the hair transplant technique from a Japanese dermatologist, Dr. Okudo. And this was in the Japanese Journal of Dermatology. It didn't really make a lot of headway because during this time was like the World War II. So unfortunately, he was the first, but it was never really noted. But what he did was this was the first hair transplant using hair plugs to treat baldness.
And that was in 1936?
1939.
39. Can you believe that we've gone, what is that, 70 years, 90 years, and they're basically doing the same thing?
Exactly. So what is it? What is it? We think we know what it is. I mean, there it is. There's really no explanation for it. It's baldness. But let's look at the hair growth cycle. So hair loss is also called alopecia. Is a disorder caused by an interruption in the body cycle of hair production. It can occur anywhere on the body, but most commonly it affects the scalp. And on average, the scalp has 100,000 hairs that cycle through periods of growing, resting, falling out, and regenerating. The hair cycle consists of 3 phases. There's the anagen phase where the hair grows actively. This phase lasts for years. And usually around between 2 to 8 years. Okay, so this phase generally refers to 85 to 90% of the hair on your head. The catagen phase is the transition phase. And at this time, the hair follicle shrinks and takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And then you have the telogen phase, which is the resting phase. This takes about 2 to 4 months. And at the end of this phase, the hair falls out. And then hopefully we'll get to the early phase here where it starts the growth phase, and the process starts over again.
And we've seen the final phase. What was it? The telogen phase happen pretty quickly and done properly.
So there's different types of hair loss. Here you can see, well, hair losses, can be linked to a person's genetics, although many medical and behavioral conditions interrupt the growth cycle and cause hair loss. There's androgenic alopecia is the most common type of hair loss, affecting more than 50 million men, 30 million women. This is just in US alone. Commonly known as male pattern baldness for men and female pattern baldness for women. This is considered hereditary, but they manage it basically with medication and surgery. Now, in male pattern hair loss, men begin anytime after puberty and progress over the course of years or decades. It starts in the temples, as we know, continues around the perimeter of the top of the head, leaving you with a ring of hair at the bottom of the scalp. Many men with male pattern baldness eventually, lose their hair and become bald. But women is a little bit different. In women, the hair slowly thins over the scalp, but the hairline usually doesn't recede. Many women experience this type of hair loss as a natural part of aging, although the hair may begin anytime after puberty. The loss may begin anytime, but their hair begins to thin dramatically, but it rarely leads to baldness. Then there's the telogen effluvium. It's a type of hair loss that occurs when large numbers of follicles on the scalp enter this resting phase of the hair growth cycle, as called the telogen. And then the next growth phase doesn't begin. And this causes hair to fall out over the scalp without new hair growth. This could be caused such as, a medical condition, for example, like a thyroid imbalance or childbirth, surgery, or fever, or shock and trauma can also trigger this type of event to happen. It also can occur from vitamin and mineral deficiencies, iron deficiency, for example, for women, and other types of medications, including contraceptives, things like that. When this happens, this usually happens for about 3 months after a type of a medical event. Then you have an anagen effluvium, and this is rapid hair loss resulting from a medical treatment, say, for example, chemotherapy. So the medications from the cancer to kill the cancer cells shuts down the hair follicle production and other parts of your body. So after the chemo, the hair usually grows back on its own. Then you have alopecia areata. This is caused by an autoimmune condition, which means that your autoimmune system attacks the healthy tissue, including the hair follicle. This causes hair to fall out and prevents new hair from growing. This condition can affect adults and children. Hair loss can be sudden without warning. Hair from the scalp typically falls out in small patches, but it's not painful. Hair in other parts of the body, also including your eyebrows, your eyelashes, may also fall out. And then over time, this disease can actually lead to alopecia totalis, where you have complete hair loss. When we decided to do this topic, I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. But it's so complicated. It really is. So we're just taking big, broad strokes here. So as I said earlier, the causes of hair loss. So we'll hit on some of these areas here because it's really interesting, actually. So of course, we know it's hereditary for some people. For men and women, this is a type of hair loss that's common worldwide. Again, male pattern baldness, female pattern baldness. So this is the list that we're going to go over next. Okay, so we've already talked about this, the male pattern baldness. And then age. With most people notice hair loss because, the hair just slows down. And then, of course, we also discussed this, alopecia areata. This is, as we said before, this develops from the person's immune system when the body's attacking the immune system, the hair follicles, and what holds the hair in place, causing hair loss. And then, of course, cancer treatments, like we discussed earlier, will cause hair loss. Childbirth, illness, or other stressors. A few months after giving birth, recovering from an illness, or having an operation, you can notice a lot of hair on your brush or on your pillow. This can also happen after a stressful event in your life, such as a divorce or death of a loved one. Hair care. If you color, perm, or relax your hair, you could be damaging your hair. And over time, this damage can lead to hair loss. And we also have hairstyle traction. This is hairstyles that pull on your scalp. You put them in these tight ponytails. if you wear your hair too tight, pulled back like that, continually pulling like that, including hair extensions, can lead to permanent hair loss. The medical name for this condition is traction alopecia.
It's funny because when you go through the progress, we see this a lot here where we live, that you have women that have thinning hair due to some of those issues. So they will go get extensions like crazy, and then they have less hair to work with, and it's a vicious
Well,
cycle.
Claire was saying that they actually glue them in the hair, right?
Yeah.
They're gluing them in the hair, and then I was reading something where it said, don't be alarmed if you take your hair extensions out and like that the hair is thin. Don't be scared, it'll grow back.
But you're using the hair extensions because your hair isn't growing back, so it's like, just say bye-bye.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and then of course, hormone imbalance. A common cause of this imbalance is polycystic ovary syndrome. It leads to cysts on a woman's ovaries, along with other signs and symptoms, which can include hair loss. Some types of birth control pills also can cause temporary hormonal imbalance. And women who develop hormonal imbalance can develop thinning hair or hair loss. And then we have medications. This is also, possible side effects of some medication can cause hair loss. So you probably, should always talk to your doctor who prescribed you the medication to see if this is a possible interaction as well. And then we have scalp psoriasis. Many people who have plaque psoriasis develop psoriasis on their scalp at some point, and this can also lead to hair loss. And then sexually transmitted infections, left untreated, a sexually transmitted infection can also lead to hair loss. Syphilis, for example, is one that can lead to patchy hair loss for your scalp, eyebrows, beard, and elsewhere. It's funny, the syphilis keeps coming up in our conversations. Like the last 3 talks, I think I've mentioned it, right?
Yeah, it's funny how that keeps coming up.
Well, I think it's not me. I think I told you that it's been on the news now lately, that it's on the rise now. So thyroid, of course, if you have a problem with your thyroid, you may see thinning hair. Some people notice that their hair comes out in clumps when they brush it. Whatever I'm doing, it's working, right?
It is.
Because
I think that's the fun part that we've seen, and depending upon the individual. I'll use Kathy Joe as an example. I think Jill and Shanna are here too, and I think both of them. I know Shanna had the questions, but Kathy Joe, I think, was one of the first ones that I think for every woman, as you age, the last thing you want to see is hair falling out, excessively, because you're like, wait a minute, I want to keep this. And she saw, she started to have massive amounts of hair fall out. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, don't worry, just watch, it'll come back, and it'll come back better. And it took about 2 to 3 months. And, now, I mean, we could probably, if she's here, we could pull her on to let her chat about it here in a minute.
Well, wait a minute. Let's finish this first and then we'll get her on. But one other thing too is that I noticed that the eyelashes, like they were falling out before, because I have that thyroid issue, right? So
yep.
But now that's not happening at all. They're growing pretty good. So they're not falling out like they were.
It's the power of silica is quite intriguing when your body is able to receive and then use the building blocks, and as we'll probably hit on here in a second, the key component of removing the toxins that
we're getting to that.
I know we will. So
yeah, we're going to get to that. So here's another thing too. Too little biotin, iron, protein, and zinc also plays a part in noticeable hair loss as well. And then we come to your favorite subject, environmental toxins, poisons, right? We're slowly being poisoned. Slowly being poisoned can lead to hair loss. Poisons that cause hair loss include arsenic, thallium, mercury, lithium. If you ingest large amounts, obviously, of warfarin, okay, this is rat poison. It also can cause hair loss. Thallium is a heavy metal that's from salt. It's tasteless, odorless, colorless. It dissolves completely in liquids. It was actually used as a rat poison and also an insecticide. It was banned in the U.S. in 1972 due to environmental concerns and extreme toxicity. So what this does is it binds with the sulfur groups in the keratin of your hair, disrupting the hair shaft. Mercury is another heavy metal implicated in alopecia. Like thallium, mercury binds also with this particular group, and the keratins in the hair can also result in hair loss. And then, of course, there's arsenic, which we know is found in the soil, the water, the seafood, industrial pesticides, animal additives, metal alloys. This is also linked with alopecia and also with all the other heavy metals. And of course, seaweed also contains potential toxic levels of arsenic. And then you have colchicine. This is a drug used to treat a number of conditions, including Mediterranean fever, Behçet's disease, amyloidosis, and then gout. So then
I bet you didn't know Behçet's disease before you started doing research into this.
No, I do know Behçet's disease. It's actually quite common here in Scandinavia.
Oh, okay, fine. I was just trying to put Behçet together with Behçet's disease. So of course you would know.
I know that one. So vitamin A also has multiple functions within the body, including skin health, vision, maintenance of your immune system. But there's two forms of vitamin in the diet that's preferred as a perform like retinol, which is found in dairy products and liver. And then there's provitamin, like a beta carotene found in plants. Well, vitamin A toxicity occurs when ingesting high qualities of the retinol form, beta carotene at large doses. But even at large doses is not considered toxic. But the RDA, okay, well, I hate quoting the RDA because the RDA for the retinol form is 4,000 international units for women and 5,000 international units for men. And vitamin A at toxic levels reportedly causes scalp alopecia as well as loss of eyelashes and eyebrows. It's interesting about vitamin A. I remember years ago, I read a study about somebody taking like massive doses of vitamin A, because before they used to say, vitamin C is for prevention, but when you get sick, you take massive doses of vitamin A, and vitamin A can actually mimic a brain tumor.
Well, and I think the other component that comes in when you're looking at different minerals, different vitamins and such, is the correlating relationship between heavy metals and blocking binding sites and nutrient metabolism, that they're linear and they're correlated. So you have people that, and you're getting labs done and they tell you you're deficient in something, so you start supplementing with something in addition without understanding what the true mechanism of action might be. In most instances, you're not deficient, you're actually just toxic. Your body can't use what's already in there, so it's showing the imbalances. And if you don't ever address the toxicity issue, you're actually going to create other toxicity issues of adding stuff in that can cause other issues. And it's funny when we look at arsenic, because I'm working with some groups of people right now that have been taking some products that are now shown to have high levels of arsenic and lead in them, and they're supposed to be healthy for you. And people are having hair falling out, they're having scalp irritation and scabs and stuff on their skin. I'm like, yeah, it's because you're poisoning yourself. But the hard part people don't understand with the metals, with the toxic metals, is it's very, very rare that you experience acute poisoning of heavy metals. What you normally see traditionally, and if you watch my interview on our YouTube channel with Will Davis, Will's one of the few instances I've ever seen of arsenic, acute arsenic poisoning, but normally it's chronic exposure. And so that's small continual exposure that builds up in you, and that's where you see these issues over time. If you start to see something really quickly, problem. But that's why as we get older, we continue to see see the issues. And, like for me, the hair aspect has always been an interesting one, because in my family, my dad has pretty good hair. And usually for men, you can look at your mother's father, as your marker for hair quality. But in my dad's side, we have a widow peak, and then I have deeper, what is in my temples. So my brother and I would always go back and forth of, "Oh, you're going bald," because my hairline receded when I turned about 25 and came back here versus being up here. So my brother would, throw shots at me. I'm like, "Nope, it's not going away." And then Christina told me to grow my hair out. So now it's lush, and I don't have to worry about anything going anywhere, as long as I stay away from a weed whacker. But it's the interesting world that happens when you take care of stuff. You add good things, but as we've seen, you like Dory's hair, Claire's hair, Birgit's hair. You can look at Shanna, Jill, Kathy, Joe. A lot of the women that we've had with us for a bit have been through this amazing process where their hair will either fall out, it'll thin out, but then when this process really starts to kick in, right, and I think you go through that follicular phase like Dory was hitting on initially, as you start to remove the metals. And she was hitting on the biotin, but you add in the bioavailable silica and the trace minerals, because the silica is the key building block for this. It's the key building block for tissue, for hair, skin, nails, organs, joints. That it isn't that quick fix, right? Everybody wants something. "Oh, I felt amazing in 2 days." Doesn't work that way for everything, right? But as you go through the process, you see things eliminate the bad stuff. And a lot of times that toxic hair, your toxic follicles have to get cleaned out. And then it starts to come back. And it's like, well, spring's here and everything starts to explode. I actually had one of my buddies, one of my longest friend, he's been bald forever, with that whole male pattern baldness. So we had him start putting drops on his head and rubbing it in every night. And after a little bit, he started to get sprouts coming back. So it's even with someone that's been bald for a while, there's ways you can do that. And actually what I would do if I was in that situation, if I was a guy and I'm like, I want to see if I can get hair to grow, I would use some Restore. I would take a few drops of Clean Slate, and every night I'd give my head a heddle. Is that what we would call it? Because if you put it on your face, it's a facial. Is that a heddle? When you
It's a new word. You made
I
it
know.
up. Oh my God.
I don't know. So, or is that like a Marco was saying he's not going bald. He has a big forehead. We call it when I was in college.
We measure in fingers.
It's the 5 head. It's not the 4 head. It's the 5 head. Sometimes people have a 6 head. It's like way back. But, I have hair back there. But no, I think it's really cool because the hair aspect is so crucial, right? For one, because some people say it's one of our antennas, but also just from feeling good and looking good, right? It's really, really crucial of how much we put on our hair. There you go. Okay, so talk to me, because your hair like has exploded. You've got all your curls back, and you're loving your curls. Yes. Your hair was not like this months ago.
No, it was horrible. It was. Every time we would go on in the group and we go live, before I would tell Jill, I'm like, I hate my hair. It looks awful.
And then what happened?
This. And I've got a ton of hair now. It was thinning and it was stringy and it was greasy all the time, no matter what shampoo I used. Yes shampoo, no shampoo. Nothing helped.
And then a few drops a few times a day. And you've done a bunch of detox stuff. You've been wellness freak for a long time. A little bit different, right?
Yes, because, and I think the kicker is because other detoxes do not add in the bioavailable minerals that you need at the same time as removing the negative. So what it does is it strips, because the heavy metals and the toxins actually, they connect to the cell receptor of the cells and they block other minerals. So like, the heavier ones like mercury and everything will block magnesium. So your body may actually have the minerals that it needs, but it will not be absorbed into the body. So whenever you remove those, if you don't have the minerals at the same time, your body kind of goes into freak out mode. So I think that's what's beautiful about this. Not only does it remove the bad, but it pushes all the good into the cell at the same time, so that and because you have the bioavailable silica from it and everything, it goes right into the cell, and it's able, I mean, it didn't take long. It only took like maybe 7 weeks before my hair started really changing.
That's good times. I told Jill to hop on here too, because she's got an interesting experience. Where is she?
She should be here. She said she was. There she is.
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, so Jill, you got to talk about your experience, and then I can use a couple guys' experience. But you didn't have to color your hair anymore.
I didn't. So I started the Trinity back in beginning of June, and I was coloring my hair every 2 weeks. And this is now, we're almost to the end of November. I've only colored my hair for the second time. So June, July, August, September, October, November. So that's twice in 6 months, where I was doing it every 2 weeks.
That's like getting a raise too, because it's kind of expensive to get your hair done.
Absolutely. Yeah. The everything I have experienced in this last 6 months is incredible.
And goodbye. And we will see you next week. Thank you all for coming. I'll turn the gallery view on.
Good night, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay,
Wonderful
take
call.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.